Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is Jess Jensen, and she is the founder and CEO of Copilot Communication, where she helps executives build trust, credibility, and warmth online so that they can open the door to clients, partners, and opportunities. And so I guess it would be kind of shorthand for executive branding. Did I get that right, Jess?
You bet. That's perfect.
Right on. Well, so, I want to talk about that because I think it's really important. And, uh, you know, uh, I just think that personal branding is has become way more important. And I think it's going to become even more important in the age dominated by AI, which we're, careening into headlong. So we'll come talk to that. But before you founded Copilot Communications, you had kind of a storied career. You were at Microsoft and Qualcomm and Adidas and Nestle. And, tell us a little bit about, life before Copilot Communications. What were you doing? What was your focus? All that stuff.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you for asking. I've had an interesting career where my horizontal through line has always been digital marketing, brand, executive communications.
Okay.
So that's been consistent. And social media came into that pretty readily in my Adidas days and then continued on. What's been interesting is that many people I know stay in the same sort of vertical industry for most of their career. And I've
Uh-huh.
actually traversed three different verticals. So, as you
Uh-huh.
mentioned, Nestle's the consumer packaged goods space.
Yep.
I remember being told when I was in business school, you have to get a job at a CPG. That's the blue chip entry point to any brand marketing job for the rest of your career.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that is still the case today in 2025, but that was certainly the
Yeah.
case back in, I guess that was 2006.
Uh-huh.
And so I was very laser focused on, I want to get at least a couple years under my belt at a CPG. I want to learn that classic brand management approach, which, P&G sort of codified back in the day. And then I moved
And
in.
and that's consumer packaged goods,
Yes,
right?
consumer
Yeah.
packaged goods. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Gillette,
CPG.
Unilever,
Yeah.
all of those big parent companies that make the products we buy in the grocery store or at Target.
Yeah. Yeah. That we buy a lot of all the time that are like the razor wears out and the
Disposable.
toothpaste gets empty and yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so we can come back to that chapter later if you'd like, but that was a really good training ground for me right out of business school. Then I traversed over into footwear and apparel. So I worked for Adidas.
Yeah.
And Adidas really at that time divided their business into two big buckets, sort of the traditional sport or on the pitch, on the court, as they would say, and then the lifestyle side, which is sort of off the pitch, off the court. So that was the space I worked in, which was very dynamic and very interesting. A lot of partnerships with celebrities in the sort of music, skateboarding, kind of
So
art space.
so give us a snapshot of that moment. Like what years was that and who were the artists and what was the state of social media at that point?
Yeah, great question. Adidas was really where I transitioned into social because social, if we
Okay.
if we turn the clocks back, for those of your listeners that are old enough to remember,
Yeah.
um, social, first started out with EDU addresses, right? It was a college thing, and then
Uh-huh.
it opened up to the public, and then it
Yep.
opened up to companies being able to create brand pages. This all happened in that 07-08 era.
Uh-huh.
And that was when I started at Adidas. So I just because right time, right place, had a great boss that believed in me. I started the first Adidas Facebook page. And it was for originals, right? Originals again is that lifestyle side of the house
Uh-huh.
where I work.
Yep.
So that Run DMC, Missy Elliott, Snoop Dogg, like those characters were in play back then.
Uh-huh.
Um, so we were really just experimenting. It was such early days. It's kind of almost where we are with AI, like right
Right
now.
now. Yeah.
And so there was nowhere near the capabilities that, many of the platforms like TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn, they didn't even exist back.
No, yeah, no.
So Facebook was kind of the mothership, and we were all just sort of playing and experimenting. And I was the right kind of company that would allow me to do that experimentation
Yeah.
and to learn it as it was being built, which was fantastic training ground.
Yeah.
So from there, I had a friend that was working at Microsoft already in market research, and the short 90-second story here is I was interviewing for a role again in digital social at Starbucks. Well, Starbucks and Microsoft are both headquartered in the Seattle area. People
Yep.
probably know that. And I was chatting with him and told him I was going to come up for some interviews. And he said, "Well, if you'd consider Starbucks, maybe you'd consider Microsoft." And I remember being so reluctant. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a developer. I'm not going to fit in tech. I never worked in tech. He's like, "Well, just come and just meet some people. Let's just chat with a few folks. I'll set up some one-on-ones. We'll grab lunch on campus. Like, you never know." Well, long story short, I was fortunate enough in that era. I know we're in a different era today, but in that era, I ended up getting offers from both companies, Starbucks and Microsoft.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth. I was very, torn because they're both fantastic brands, and the team seemed really, really thoughtful, and the work would be very interesting. But ultimately, Microsoft wanted me because I had built now this social media practice within the digital team at Adidas.
Uh-huh.
And they wanted to cascade that social media sort of muscle through the Windows division. So
Yeah.
um, it wasn't that I had a tech background, it was that I had a digital and a social background that really brought me into the tech world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, that's that. And so, and then when you were at Microsoft, what was going on at that point? Like when you took that job and for the years you were at Microsoft, what are some of the memories you have of what year it was and what was going on and what platforms and things?
Yeah, so Microsoft was kind of the 2.0 of social. It wasn't those early days like at Adidas. Now we're
Yeah.
into 2010, 11, 12, 13 era.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Facebook was maturing, growing like gangbusters. Twitter was beginning to be a thing. We had very close relationships with our sort of leads at Facebook and Twitter back then. We meet with them often. And the role I ended up playing was kind of two part. One, it was um, so Microsoft had 56 subsidiaries at that time, meaning 56 parts of the world had marketing offices with people working.
Wow.
There was a massive marketing organization across the globe. Almost every major city you can imagine had teams.
Yeah.
And so it was still Wild Wild West, right? Facebook at that time was still, again, the mothership for all social media. But every market, every country manager was standing up a page. There was no governance. The brand was
Right.
bananas.
Yeah.
And so I recognized that, and I really worked hard to put together a playbook and a framework and just some level of consistency, because here you have Windows, which is, arguably one of the most recognizable brands in the world, and it
Yeah.
was showing up in like 15 different ways across the
Yeah. Yeah.
globe on
Yeah.
Facebook. So that was a piece of my work, was sort of really working and entrenching myself with these country managers and figuring out the global framework and architecture for how Windows shows up on social.
Yeah.
And then the other part was I kind of became this internal evangelist, right? Because there was still a lot of folks, maybe more seasoned, more further in their careers than I was. I was in my early 30s at that point, who just thought this is what kids do and this is going to come and go, and we're not going to really spend so much effort or money on this.
Right.
Um, and TV was still a big thing, out of home, like magazine, print, like it was those mediums, right, that were still being
Yeah.
invested in, and maybe some search. But
Yeah.
I remember when I was at Microsoft, less than 10% of our media spend was digital, less than 10%.
Wow.
So it was
Wow.
still, it was
Okay.
a
Yeah.
baby. It was a baby.
Early days. Yeah.
Early days. So I ended up kind of becoming very close with our partners again at Facebook and Twitter. And I'm actually still friends with those two guys today. And really being this evangelist inside of Microsoft for the power and really like what was to come with social media.
That's cool. That's really cool. That's amazing days. You know, one thing as a side note that I never really realized, I just realized it like yesterday. It I was, I was like on the internet in 87 and started my first .com company in 1994 and,
Mm,
was in that whole era very, very, very active. And I remember thinking how silly it was that like, I'm like, why would you build your website on Facebook? Like, why would you put your whole company presence on Facebook? Like you could just build a website.
mhm.
But what I didn't think about and what I didn't realize until yesterday or so is that was a really brilliant move by Facebook to freeze Google search out of everything that went on in Facebook.
Mm.
And so all of a sudden, Facebook now, not all of a sudden, has this enormous search, like they're doing amazing business, letting people buy ads on Facebook, that, and they took that entire chunk away from Google because Google can't search their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it became kind of a walled garden, and now,
Yeah.
obviously it's part of a larger conglomerate Meta.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, I still today I use the terminology of that, the owned, earned, paid has been around for a long time, that kind of
Yeah.
triangle that a lot of marketers
Yeah. Yeah.
know well, but it's really owned, earned, paid, and rented. And social media is a rented platform. We don't have full control over it like you do a website. And you don't get all of the same analytics and data. And at any moment, the algorithm can change.
Yep, that's for sure. That's really good. Owned, earned, paid, and rented, right? Like my really wonderful, extremely important to me LinkedIn profile is rented, and I pay a pretty high rent for that. Given how much work I do. And we're going to talk about LinkedIn. But you did all this stuff and had all these amazing experiences in social media. But then there was a day in 2010 when you were standing in a tobacco field, if I understand the story correctly. What was
Yeah.
that day like?
So that was so it was 2019. It was a little
Oh,
later.
2019. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Excuse
no,
me.
no, no worries. So after I left Microsoft, I left for the role at Qualcomm. And that was another kind of step up in terms of responsibility, where instead of just looking after social for a division, which was Windows, the largest division in the company, but still one, I was responsible for social for all of Qualcomm. And a lot of people don't even know what Qualcomm is or does. It's B2B tech, but it's in the semiconductor space.
Yeah.
So it's really a chip designer primarily, but it also has a massive R&D arm. So there's a lot of innovation and patents that come out of Qualcomm that then benefit the tech industry at large.
I
I
mean,
didn't know.
Qualcomm is in a ton of things people know, but they don't necessarily know that Qualcomm is in there.
Is
Would that be
exactly right.
fair? Yeah.
Exactly right. And so the Snapdragon system on a chip, SoC, that chip that's this kind of just powerhouse, is inside almost every smartphone, many tablets, and now PCs as well. So I could do a whole commercial for you on Qualcomm, but the gist of it was that I had never worked in B2B. All right, all of these brands, Nestle, Adidas, and Windows, were all consumer facing brands. So I get to Qualcomm, and after doing a lot of the usual things, right? Social, that became influencer, paid digital, etc. Around 16, 17, we started to identify other C-suite leaders at other tech companies are starting to build a presence online. And B, we're seeing a lot of the traditional brand work, right? The campaigns and the corporate brand work on all the digital channels, specifically social, begin to decline. Impressions are falling, engagements are falling. We're just not getting the same level of interaction that we used to. The exposure is shrinking. Now, that could have been partly because there were just more and more brands and companies jumping into those spaces. But it was also, yeah, I think it was becoming cluttered. But also, we recognized at the core, people want to connect with people and they less and less want to connect with brands, right? A brand is an entity, it doesn't have a humanity to it. So we thought, let's experiment with a pilot where we begin to train and support and stand up our senior leaders, right? Our C suite at Qualcomm, and begin to build platforms for them in addition, right? It augmented the corporate effort,
Yes.
wasn't
Yeah.
replacing it. So that took a few years to get off the ground, to kind of convince and persuade, get the right personalities in place. But once I was able to get our CEO enrolled and understood the power of his own voice online, then you can imagine that cascaded out to all of his directs.
Yeah.
So before you know it, we've got a whole program, and then we're having to hire support because there's no way that I can just do this as a side project anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so that really became a chunk of my job the last 4-ish years that I was at Qualcomm, was this executive digital comms work. And I discovered that I was good at it. I was able to pull out stories in people by interviewing and getting to know them, and then help them craft those stories into kind of editorial themes that they could publish publicly. I also just liked the one-on-one relationship, just kind of getting to know
Yeah.
them as people, getting them more comfortable on these platforms that I had kind of grown up on, right? But were still sort of scary and could feel reluctant to dive into. I was able to kind of be a partner. So that all set the stage for the practice that is now Copilot, um, where I work with clients individually to build out their digital platforms and ideally bring some goodness and some positivity and thoughtfulness into what is an environment now that has changed pretty dramatically since I started back in '07.
So what was that big realization in 2019? Like I thought that was very, very interesting and very spot on.
Yeah, thank you. I thanks for bringing that back. So I was on a family vacation to Nashville. We had never been. Always wanted to go. Going to hit up the Grand Ole Opry and go on some music tour. And we had such a good time. So much good food. One day we took a little excursion out to the country, so kind of got out of the city. We had a little guide. Her name is Jennifer. She was born and raised in Tennessee, and she took us around. We went to tobacco fields. We had lunch at this like the awesome cafeteria that was the metal trays with the compartments and the like
Yeah.
collard greens and the styrofoam cup and everyone noticed, of course, that we were not from there. It was so you definitely felt the eyes on you. But I was really curious to see a side of Tennessee that wasn't just the big city that everyone reads about.
Yeah.
And she was a great sort of concierge because she could give us sort of the inside scoop. And I remember when we sat down at lunch at that diner, I remember we had a minute to pause. We were out of the car, and she asked me what I did for work. And it was one of the first times in a long time that I needed to explain what I did from scratch to someone I didn't know who wasn't in the tech industry and wasn't in marketing. It's just, it's not every day that you have to start, from scratch. And when I was telling her what I did around social and so forth, I could feel like a hesitation, almost like a little bit of a sadness.
Yeah.
Um, like I needed to almost apologize for working in a space that had unfortunately grown, in some corners toxic, and had become divisive in many ways and was being sort of weaponized and used in manners that I never thought it would be. And certainly it
Yeah.
wasn't like that when I started out. And I didn't do anything that day, but there was a kind of a pivot in my mind in 19 when I had to tell that story to somebody fresh, where I really was asking myself, is this what I want to do for the next 20 years?
Yeah.
Is this where I want to invest my energy to continue to build? Or is there a way to use all of my skill set in a perhaps a more constructive manner?
Well, that's where the 2010 mistake on my part came from, because one of the things that you talk about in that story is that gr suicide rate for high school girls had gone up
Mm,
65% from 2010 to
yeah.
2019 when you had that conversation, and I thought it was really poetic justice on some level, or poetically correct, that you would be having that conversation about what social media had become in a tobacco field, right?
Yes.
Where there was an entire industry that used to tell us that like 9 out of 10 doctors smoke camel, you
Right.
know,
Right.
even after long after they knew what was going on. They continued to lie and
Mhm.
obfuscate and go awful places. I just thought that was freaking poetic.
Yeah. Well, thank you for noticing that connection. Yeah. I mean, and again, I'm sure I don't know, but I'm guessing that back in whatever the 50s and 60s that a lot of the people that began in the tobacco industry didn't realize or didn't intend for it to become what it did. And
Yeah,
I mean, I remember thinking back in whatever, 08, 09, I remember thinking, wow, we're putting so much of ourselves in that time. Again, this is just Facebook, the days of Facebook, putting so much of ourselves, photos and information, and where we grew up and our relationship status. I'm like, I wonder what they're going to do with all this. Like, it's like an anthropology study. What is this going to be, a time capsule? Like, what? I really, it never even occurred to me. And all good. I mean, capitalism. I'm no shade. Like, it became
yeah,
monetized to sell ads. And I get it, it's a business, but like simple minded me back then, I just wasn't even thinking that all of this information would become leverage.
yeah. I mean, I remember being even more naive and like, you know, I was running around telling people like, this is like standing up and freeing our thumbs, man. Like we're a collaborative species. We're going to be able to collaborate like never before, And I remember those heady days of the early internet when like 5 minutes ago, the sequencing the human genome was impossible. And
Mm,
then along comes the internet, and 5 minutes later we sequenced the whole human genome.
mm,
And it was a collaborative effort across like the whole entire world. And I was like, whoa. But I will tell you, uh in 1994, I got to interview a guy. We're going a little off track here, I want to admit, but I think that's what we do here. I interviewed a guy named Phil Zimmerman who had created a program called Pretty Good Privacy, which was a strong encryption program that was relatively easy to use. And he had it on his server at his university, and somebody downloaded it from outside the United States. And the United States was after him for exporting weapons grade encryption. And he was pretty much a dorky mathematician. I don't think
mm,
he was an international, arms dealer. So we interviewed him for this magazine I was working with at the time. And I got to interview him, and he said two things that just I cannot get out of my head these days. The first thing he said is, John, this is the first time in the history of the world that we don't need half of the population in order to read the other half's mail, right? Like they did
mm,
in like Soviet Russia or whatever, right?
mm,
Steaming open the letters and
mhm,
seeing if anybody's writing anything subversive. But dude, it took half the population to read the other half's mail. No longer. We just run it through a computer. And then he said the thing that really chills me. He said, if we create the infrastructure for a dictator, he will come.
mm.
I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And, and I feel like maybe with the best of intentions, I mean, like I remember tweeting in the old days, like I was not trying to create something awful or evil or, enslave humanity. Um, but anyway, that
Yeah.
is kind of what I mean, like I have a similar experience, like that sort of I feel guilty thing of like I'm telling somebody what I do. And I'm like, I almost need to apologize because I feel like I was just so gung ho and brought this on and didn't think about it. So I really resonate with your story. And
Yeah. Well, and
and
I,
I,
I think, oh, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I think that, we can finish this up and go someplace positive because I think there are positive places, but you know, please, whatever you were going to say.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add, and then yeah, I'll jump into maybe where I think it's the goodness is happening today.
Yeah.
There was a moment, a pretty critical moment, where agnostic of pick your social platform, where our feeds went from being chronological to being based on things we had engaged with and followed. So that, like, I don't know that people recognize what a pivot that was. If we, and there's ways, some of the
Yeah.
platforms allow you to revert back to chronological. Most people don't know how to do it. They don't take the time to do it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
defaults to being what you've engaged with and who you follow. And so that's where we've, unfortunately, one of the big decisions that maybe at the time was, again, altruistic or sort of even just, let's just try it, let's experiment. But it's really shifted what we see online.
And Jess, I remember the day sitting at my computer when Google announced they were going to do like personalized search results. And like I would
Mhm.
start seeing something different than
Yeah.
someone else saw based on, and I remember being really unhappy about that and very troubled by that. And I couldn't exactly pin down why, but I did not like that idea.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then I
That's
think we hyperdrived it with the best AI minds and the best machine learning minds. And they created these algorithms whose sole purpose immediately became to like figure us out and radicalize us and separate us and drive up the
Mhm.
rage and the anger and
Mhm.
the because that's what gets us to stick around and
Right.
spend more time on the platform, right?
Right. Well, there's that famous Charlie Munger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love Charlie. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's passed away now, but I am still a big fan. And he has that famous quote that says something like, show me the incentive and I'll show you the behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we incentivize the platforms, if they benefit
Yeah.
monetarily, financially,
Yes.
by keeping people on the platform for more minutes or more hours, because they can then serve up more ads to them, right?
Yes. Yep.
Then understandably, again, it's a for-profit business
Yeah.
and
Yep.
they're going to then do whatever, turn the levers that whichever direction they need to be turned to encourage people and entice them to stay there longer. And
Yeah.
that's going to often be not a chronological view. It's going to be what I've really engaged and touched most recently and most actively, because that's what it thinks I'm the most interested in. So
Yeah.
that's where we get that sort of unfortunate funnel of like the same thing in and out.
Well, and I love the saying from Scrum, don't look for bad people, look for bad systems.
Yeah.
And I think we have a bad system. But I
Yeah,
think that there are green shoots out there, right? Like,
for sure. And like that's a great segue. I think one of the green shoots is today is LinkedIn.
yeah, I agree. I mean,
Eh,
I think they're getting a disproportionate every day they've got like more and more power in their hands. And I just really hope that they wield it responsibly. But I
Yeah,
think it's awesome. I think LinkedIn is actually really like an upside of this whole thing.
I think so too. I mean, there are just a few stats that I've read recently that stick with me. LinkedIn, so since 2019, so since the pandemic, the number of users has doubled, which is
Yeah.
pretty remarkable growth. We're not seeing that kind of growth on any other platform besides TikTok.
Yeah.
Um, so there's definitely more people there. Number two, The level of education achieved, right, bachelor's degrees and above, six-figure household incomes, which if you're a business owner, you're trying to attract clients that are, of a certain net worth. There is over 50% that are there on LinkedIn. You can't say that about any other social network.
Yeah.
So the highly educated professional audience. And then the other thing that I love, because again, my background is marketing and communication, so I'm inherently interested in writing, right? I care about the written word. I care about visuals. The LinkedIn has become the number one writing platform online now. There
Yeah.
is
Yep.
far more use of it as an editorial publishing, almost sort of short form blogging
Yeah.
platform. Whereas I think even 5 years ago, a lot of us really thought of it as just like a digital repository for our resume.
Absolutely. I have a good friend named Svenja Malzahn, who is a LinkedIn top voice, and part of her expertise is how to use LinkedIn. And what she said that really just was a aha moment for me is that the way LinkedIn perceives itself now is, if it were a Venn diagram, one circle would be social media, the other circle would be expert content, like top,
Mm,
like magazines and publications and stuff. And it's where social media and expert content overlap.
mm,
That's
I like
LinkedIn.
that.
So when you're posting on LinkedIn, when you're doing things on LinkedIn, even when you're replying on LinkedIn, what it works the best and what they're tweaking their algorithms for is to surface really expert, helpful content
Mm.
in different areas of expertise.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I see that play out. I feel like it's such a hotbed for, again, executives, senior leaders that are inside of, small, mid, and large size companies, and then founders, entrepreneurs who are looking to attract clients or find
Yep.
partnerships. So it's honestly, maybe it's just the stage and age in my career too. Like it's a more interesting place for me than it was 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think both things, right? Like, I do think that there are maybe Gen Zers who are listening to this going, I don't know, man. LinkedIn, like, it's a bunch of upper crusties and like it's pretty exclusive and whatever. But I still think it's got its upsides even there. Um, and you know, I like that they are actively surfacing useful, helpful content. Like that's what they're trying to make the algorithm do. I'm like, okay, that's that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I think it will apply to the Gen Zers. I mean, my older daughter is in that generation, and she just I didn't tell her to. I swear I didn't. She just created her own LinkedIn profile a couple months ago over the summer,
Yeah, there you
and
go.
she's got her part-time job on there, and that she's in FBLA, and she's now
Yeah,
posting about things, conferences that she wants to go to. And i I mean, I
yeah,
wish I would have started as early as she did in terms of like building my
yeah.
professional portfolio, but it's a
Right.
footprint for her when she eventually applies to college and for internships.
Well, and I just had a conversation today with one of my clients who's this enormous social, influencer on Instagram. And what we talked about for quite a while today on our call was, what do you want to be seen as an expert in? Like, what is
Mhm.
your area of expertise that you're going to carve out for yourself? And even though she's got just an unbelievable number of followers on Instagram, she had like 45 followers on LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay, so it's cool, but you stepping into this world of being a thought leader and being an expert and wanting to be a speaker and all that kind of stuff, you do like, it's just, I don't think it's even negotiable. You have to go set up your LinkedIn profile so that when that meeting planner or that person who wants to hire you to come speak or whatever, when they go look at your LinkedIn, it needs to convey your expertise, you know?
Yep. And I think, I know we're probably nearing our end here, but I think that what you just said is so pertinent to the conversations I have with a lot of my clients. It's this notion of you need to know first what you want to stand for, or as you
Yeah.
said, what do you want to be associated with?
Yeah.
And we sometimes call that a narrative platform, but it's a fancy way of just saying, let's pick, three or four themes or territories that you inherently it's based in your values, your professional expertise, your personality. You believe in these things. These are you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you are going to then say, okay, I'm putting a line in the sand. These three things I'm going to come back to and create content around them again and again and again over
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
And that's what builds, actually, that professional digital platform is built on that editorial strategy.
Well, and that thing that you discovered at Qualcomm is something that LinkedIn talks about openly, which is that people do not follow companies.
Mm.
They follow people. So it is, as a company, if you're not actively supporting your top leaders in being out there and having followers and spreading your message, it's a huge miss. And if you are one of those people, if you're one of those like leaders, VPs, presidents, whatever, CEOs, and you're not reaching out to your audience, boy, are you missing out on a huge opportunity for your company, but you're also missing out on a huge opportunity for yourself. How great is it to be at Accenture and be able to talk about the circular economy and write a book about it and have the platform of all this social media and get all these followers? Because maybe you're not going to be at Accenture for the rest of your life,
Mhm.
but they're going to be very happy to help you establish your expertise
Mhm.
and talk about what they're doing and their initiatives while you're there. And that's going to be an enormous bonus for you for the rest of your whole career, right?
Right. Right, right. It's the whole idea of, I mean, from an employee or individual leader standpoint, yes, you said it perfectly. Most of us are not going to be at the same company for 30 years. We're just not even
Yeah.
20, frankly. So you take it with you, right? You're building a
Yeah.
platform that's digital, it's portable, it goes with you wherever you go. And ideally, you're still you, you're just connected to a new brand and whatever your next chapter is. So that's
Yeah.
the win for the individual. But when you're look at the win for the company, again, if we know that the metrics show people are not engaging with brands for the most part, there's a few exceptions, but generally speaking, it's not interesting anymore. It's
Yeah.
over, right? Like we've
Yeah.
done that for years and we know better now.
Yeah.
And so we're engaging with the thought leaders, the innovators, the people that are really leading that company forward, because we know that
Yeah.
they're going to show us their point of view, their angle, and that's inherently more interesting than sort of the PR kind of generic version of what's going on.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's a
and the
win
key
for the
word there
company
is,
as well.
and the key word there is people, right? We follow the people who do these things. So listen, I know I promised I'd get you out of here in probably about 3 minutes. Um, I think that, if somebody listening here wanted to have you look at their LinkedIn with them, I wonder if we could talk you into like doing something like that, or what, like, is there any way people could reach out to you for that?
Yes, well, yes, John. Since you asked, I will extend a an offer that really I think sets people up for success, and at least it's the first step. So if you go to my website, which is just copilotcommunications.com, I'm sure we'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
You can just hit contact and you can book a half an hour with me. Mention Live Like a Leader podcast, mention that you heard this conversation on this podcast, and I will do a LinkedIn audit. I'll look at both your profile and your editorial strategy, and I'll give you some actionable next steps on a call free of charge.
That would be phenomenal. And I think that if you're listening to this and you're not already just completely dialed on LinkedIn, you should do this. So Jess, is there anything I didn't ask you about? Like anything that like we should have talked about that you want to? mention before we go?
And the only thing I would leave your listeners with is that I talk to a lot of people about how they show up online, and there's a lot of consistency with people believing that they have nothing to say, or who would
Yeah. Yeah.
care, right? You
I
you
run
have
into that all the time too. Yeah.
yes. Um, and I just would encourage everyone to sort of give yourself grace and actually, believe that your point of view, your experience is really interesting to somebody else. But the only way they're ever going to hear about that is if you are taking a public step forward. And often that's on digital places like LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to believe that your voice matters. And in fact, maybe now those positive, constructive voices matter more than anything.
Yeah. Boy, amen. Amen. So yeah, if you've got something positive and constructive to say, not only would people be interested, but like I think you owe the world to say that, right? And one of the things that I always tell people, Jess, is like, look, you've had these experiences that have really impacted you and they've changed how you thought about things and they helped you develop your values and why you think things like integrity or whatever are important, right? You've had these experiences and you've learned a lot from them. And that experience only helps you until you tell your story and you share the story of how that happened, that you learned that this was really important, or that place where you fell down and really were embarrassed, but learned an unbelievably important lesson that changed your life and made you more successful. If you don't share those stories, then they're only benefiting you. But the minute that you share them, they're now leveraged. That benefit gets leveraged across everybody that heard it.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
And someplace like a LinkedIn profile is a place where you can get even bigger reach, right? Like start in the all hands meeting and then go global,
Right,
right?
right. Take those internal messages that you're probably already working pretty hard on and let them out in the wild because I bet a lot of other folks look up to you that you don't even know about.
Yeah. Well, Jess, I was really looking forward to our conversation and I'm glad we had it. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, you bet. I was happy to do it.
And to you listening, thank you for joining us. Doesn't make a difference if you don't listen. And if you would do me a favor, do us a favor and give us a 5-star review, give us, write a little bit about what you like about the show and tell some friends. We want to reach more and more people with these positive, fun, interesting, helpful conversations. And I appreciate you joining us today on Live Like a Leader show. See you next time. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.